Hello and welcome. I'm Leanne Gerrans and you're watching W News Extra, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. Border clashes between Thailand and Cambodia intensify as the death toll rises and thousands flee. President Trump attacks Europe and says Russia has the upper hand in the war with Ukraine. And the world's first ban on social media for under-16s comes into effect in Australia. Now, fighting between Thailand and Cambodia over a disputed border is continuing to spread, and thousands of people have been displaced. Both sides blame each other for the fresh wave of clashes, with Cambodia claiming 2 more civilians were killed overnight. Meanwhile, Thailand has reported that at least 3 soldiers have been killed. Earlier, I spoke to our correspondent Patrick Fogg, who gave us the latest. Take a listen.
The situation is becoming more serious. It's gotten more intensified over the last 24 hours. Fighting has broken out in 9 provinces along the disputed border area, and the Thai Air Force has confirmed that it launched a second day of airstrikes, although it declined to give any further details. The death toll is also rising. You mentioned that on the Thai side, they say that 3 of their soldiers have been killed and dozens others wounded as well. The Cambodian side says 9 civilians are dead and about 20 wounded.
To discuss this and all of today's stories, I'm joined by Al Arabiya English journalist Wandi Intengento and Managing Director of This Is Dubai, Michael Jabri Pickett. Wandi and Michael, brilliant to both have you on the show with me this evening. Michael, let's start with you. We're going to be concentrating on Thailand and Cambodia. We had a previous ceasefire agreement between these 2 countries that was brokered by President Donald Trump. What's gone so wrong?
That agreement did not address the 2 underlying issues that have been affecting both sides for an awful long time. One is the border dispute. There is an 11th century temple that is on the Cambodian side, perhaps, but the Thais would actually like to claim it as theirs. So that wasn't addressed. And then there are the Thais, Thailand is holding 18 Cambodian hostages. So when the underlying issues remain unresolved, even a ceasefire cannot be extended that long, because both sides will end up becoming antagonistic towards the other, because the problems that started it are still there on the table.
And what's really interesting is many analysts who have been talking about the recent clashes that have now escalated again between Thailand and Cambodia have been talking about the ceasefire deal that was brokered with President Trump and also with the Prime Minister of Malaysia. And they say that the big problem is the ceasefire deal came to be under tariff pressure. And like you said, enough of those core issues weren't addressed at the time. So it's really interesting to hear that the US tariff pressure got the ceasefire deal over the line, but it's been difficult to hold because the basic issues are still there, really. And Wandi, you know, we talk about this, and when we see these kind of skirmishes on borders, thousands of people have to be displaced as a result to keep them safe. What's the advice being given to residents on both sides of the border?
I mean, talking about displacement, already 125,000 people from just Thailand have been displaced. Both Thailand and Cambodia have put in measures, safety measures, and of course, the key message here that they've sent out to the residents, both Cambodia and Thailand, is that the residents need to move away from the border. And of course, we've also seen the US Embassy both in Thailand and of course in Cambodia sending out alerts, travel advisories to their citizens to also do the same, moving away from the border and updating their details, their information, you know, in case, you know, something really, really bad happens, which already has happened. And of course, when it comes to businesses, I know we're talking about residents, businesses, travel agents, have, put out also alerts to tourists, and we know that Thailand will be the one that's mainly impacted because Thailand's tourism sector contributes to about 20%. So tourists will be affected, but tourism agencies have put out alerts, and of course both governments, and of course we've seen the US embassies and Chinese embassies as well.
Yeah, so it's a serious threat for the ASEAN countries, as we are seeing. Of course, it's Christmas, Thailand, a hugely popular destination for many people. But also, Michael, when we look at this issue between Thailand and Cambodia, it's been ongoing for 4 decades. And it doesn't seem clear what's reignited this escalation we are seeing.
Well, there's a couple of things at play, and I would even go say that it's gone, the tensions have existed for more than 100 years. Some would say that it was as far back as when the French left Cambodia and the border was set. The Thais were not necessarily happy with that. But there are issues that remain between these two countries. Some analysts have pointed to the skirmishes, of course, and the issue of landmines. The Thais accuse the Cambodians of planting new landmines, which have maimed and killed some Thai soldiers. But the other big issue that really has come into play, and it's no surprise, 2025, but there's been an awful lot of nationalistic propaganda on both sides of the border from all sorts of different people, sort of on social media, trumpeting the necessity for the Thais to stand up for their border and for the Cambodians not to back down. And that has created a little bit more tension, and it's also, analysts again would say that that's one of the reasons why there's nobody that is backing down at this point, because they feel they have to stand their ground.
And Wandi, we spoke about people being evacuated from where they live currently. What's the plan for them? Where are they taking these people to? Where are they finding safety within the country? Are they being looked after?
Of course, I mean, they have allocated areas, both in Thailand and Cambodia, to build makeshift shelters for residents. For an example, I saw a photograph of children in a market, a market where you buy your vegetables. So they've they've allocated certain areas to make these makeshift evacuation centers. Yeah.
And that's the interesting part, right? Because when we think about it, it's a lot of people that are affected by this. Like you said, 125,000 people in Thailand alone have moved, 20,000 in Cambodia. But I wonder, Michael, if other things are on our mind now, and should tariffs be kept separate from peace deals that have made? Because this is something analysts are saying here. Donald Trump, and they got this ceasefire over the line because of tariff pressure, but now many people saying, not quite sure that works.
When history books are written a few years from now, and we look back on the summer of 2025, it'll be very easy to talk about that as the summer of tariffs, where everybody was obsessed with it.
Yeah,
governments around
myself included.
Governments around the world were absolutely concerned that they had to do everything possible to make sure they stayed on the right side of Donald Trump, or else they were going to be irreparably damaged because of the size of the tariffs. So yes, I think pre-Donald Trump's second term, I believe that most people would have said this is how diplomacy works, is that military is one issue, nationalistic issues are another, tariffs, economic issues, military ones. These are all the different pieces. And sometimes you might pull one lever hoping that something else will happen. But Donald Trump was very blatant throughout the summer about how if he didn't like something, he was going to impose tariffs. I'm Canadian. He has done that where he didn't like a TV commercial that the province of Ontario put out during the World Series, and so he imposed tariffs and he cut off talks. So I wouldn't go so far as to say he's petty, but he certainly recognizes that there are a lot of issues that are happening around the world, some that he doesn't agree on. He'll speak out on them. And if they offend him so much, because he is in this wonderfully powerful position, he will impose tariffs. So it's understandable that the Thais and the Cambodians were 100% willing to play ball.
And I think it is really interesting because there has been a muted reaction from the White House due to these recent clashes. Trump has called on both sides to honour the ceasefire deal, but we'll be keeping a close eye on that story. Wendy and Michael, thank you so much. Stay right there now as we move on to another story. And President Trump has said Russia has the upper hand and his Ukrainian counterpart Zelenskyy needs to get his act together whilst talking about the war between Russia and Ukraine during an interview with Politico's Dasha Burns. In the wide-ranging interview, he also attacked European leaders and described the continent as decaying. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Your team has been going back and forth between Putin and Zelenskyy with various drafts of a peace deal. Which country right now is in the stronger negotiating position?
Well, there can be no question about it. It's Russia. It's a much bigger country. It's a war that should have never happened. Frankly, it wouldn't have happened if I were president, and it didn't happen for 4 years. I watched that taking place, and I said, wow, they're going to cause some problems here. And it started, and it could have evolved into World War III, frankly. I think it's probably not going to be happening now. I think if I weren't president, you could have had World War III. I think you would have had a much bigger problem than you have right now. But right now, it's a big problem. It's a big problem for Europe, and they're not handling it well.
So just before we get into that, I want to bring you some breaking lines that we are getting. President Zelenskyy is speaking at the moment, and he says, Zelenskyy says Ukraine is ready for energy ceasefire if Russia agrees. Zelenskyy says Kyiv will do everything to have a meeting at top level with the US within the next 2 weeks. And Zelenskyy says Russian strikes on energy shows it has no desire for peace talks. Well, there we are. So we're hearing from Zelenskyy. He's putting out his feelings. But let's talk about Donald Trump, Wendy, because he's definitely made his thoughts on Europe in that Politico interview absolutely clear today, hasn't he?
Of course, Donald Trump has entirely lost respect for the EU. I mean, it's quite clear. At this point, Donald Trump is very critical of the EU, and it's a sign that there's a widening rift between Trump and obviously Europe. So what he has said is he has, I guess, highly criticized EU leadership and labeled them as weak, and said they spend more time wanting to be politically correct, and that's something that Trump is obviously not about. Yeah. He has basically criticized them, saying also that they don't even have their house in order. Looking at the immigration policies, definitely. So and also when you're looking at the progression of this peace deal, Trump says that EU has been basically sabotaging the peace process. So Trump is not happy with the EU. This will continue to affect their relationship going forward. Trump is in a rush to seal this deal. And he says the EU, they're not serious.
Michael, dare I say, I think he's got a tiny bit of a point on the EU.
Which point would that
I
be?
listened to the interview today with Politico. I found it quite interesting. I do think that this wide-ranging attack on Europe has been brewing. I don't think we should be surprised by this. I think we have seen the US National Security Strategy document that came out. J.D. Vance also came to Europe. You remember the Munich Security Conference attacked Europe on the freedom of speech. And I think when it comes to dithering and being slow, Europe undoubtedly has been. And I think that Europe would accept that criticism to some degree, because when it comes to Ukraine, they've had talks about talks. Let's unfreeze the Russian assets that we have, give it to Ukraine. Belgium's blocking it, Europe's still talking about it. When it came to missiles, it was the same thing. And I feel like Europe haven't got their act together enough to help Ukraine.
So there are different approaches. Donald Trump only has to consult with Donald Trump. If you're Italy, if you're France, you have so many other partners.
But that's what annoys Donald Trump.
Absolutely. And this is where he also doesn't have a great appreciation, it seems, for history. He also doesn't have a great understanding that sometimes the parts are greater than the individual. And in Europe, the way that it's worked for the past 80 years, and let's face it, it didn't work so well for a while when each country was operating on its own agenda, as Donald Trump does. He doesn't have to consult with anybody. In North America, he is, bigger than Canada. He's bigger than everybody in South America. But in Europe, it doesn't work like that. And they've learned from their lessons. They've recognized that they need to work as one unit, which means that it's not just one country stepping forward and saying, this is what we're going to do. You have to get a consensus. Donald Trump does not like building consensus. This is not what he is in politics to do.
Maybe Wandi's right. He's just impatient. And he's wanted this deal on Russia and Ukraine since the first day. He said, I could end it in 24 hours, and it's just not going his way.
It's not. The UK actually rejected claims that they're not doing anything about it. And they said that we've imposed sanctions. Hello, Donald Trump. It's not like we're sitting here. We're sifting through the information. We're trying to reach consensus, amongst us, and we're trying to get to a point where no one is going to get killed. He blamed the EU. Donald Trump blamed the EU for obviously this ongoing war, saying that the reason why more people are dying is because you cannot come to a final decision, and you cannot implement any action that will end the war.
And it's so interesting because I just want to bring something else to you. Earlier on in that Politico interview, I'm just going to have a look at some of the wires that are crossing, because apparently Zelenskyy is now saying that he would hold elections, which is really interesting. And he's talking to the Ukrainian parliament about getting a framework up to do that. And I found that really interesting because in that Politico interview, Donald Trump was asked, should Zelenskyy hold elections? And he said he should. It's time for him to hold elections. He's been putting elections off because, Russia always we don't want to deal with Zelenskyy because he is not elected. And I think it's really interesting because now we almost see Zelenskyy listening to Donald Trump and saying, actually, I'll put a framework in, and if you want Ukraine to hold elections in wartime, which never happens, we'll do it.
But this is also how you negotiate. You don't come out and say, oh, I'm willing to give you everything that you want. And I believe that for President Zelenskyy, the line in the sand is territorial concessions.
Yeah.
That he probably recognizes it all will come down to what he will concede. But if he has to hold elections, Donald Trump can then go back to Vladimir Putin and say, look, you got this, maybe you're not going to get that. Or maybe you're not going to get as much territory as you want. And this is where Donald Trump wants the president of Ukraine to come forward and say, yes, I'll give you everything that you want, when it seems to all accounts that this 20-point peace plan at this point is very much in favor of Russia.
And I wonder if that's because Donald Trump almost respects the aggressor in some respects, bringing Russia out of isolation. It's been a pariah state for so long. We are seeing a big diplomatic and foreign policy shift when it comes to Russia, which I think will be another interesting conversation that we'll all be having in time. Where does Russia stand on the global stage after all of this?
And this is, to your point, this is one of the reasons why I don't think that Donald Trump has the patience to go through these negotiations. Vladimir Putin is an existential threat to the Europeans as well as a real threat. And because Donald Trump doesn't live in Europe, he doesn't have that appreciation. Instead, he looks at it from afar and he sees an incredibly strong, aggressive man, and that's very much what he likes how he likes to project himself.
I still think that Europe have dithered on this.
Yes.
And I still think that Donald Trump does have a fair point.
Agreed.
When it does come to Europe, because a lot could have been done a lot earlier on, a lot quicker, and it's been a very difficult road. And we also can't forget that this is almost a proxy war. If we have a look in Ukraine, the weapons that are being used, they're American. Europe are buying them from America and sending them to Ukraine. So it is, in many respects, we do forget that, but it is American weapons.
And I would agree that there is, to get to your earlier point about the Europeans dithering, I think that instead of Belgium and France being concerned about the legal issues if they were to take the frozen Russian assets and give them to Ukraine, they should say, you lost all legal right when you invaded another country.
Yeah.
Instead, they're having far too many conversations. I agree with that.
And that's what annoys Donald Trump.
Sorry, well, I mean, I think what's quite clear is that Donald Trump believes that there isn't enough political will to make this peace deal come to light. That's really, I think, what he believes.
Doesn't think Europe have been strong enough or want it enough.
Yeah.
But he also doesn't seem to have an appreciation that there has to be a back and forth, there has to be a negotiation. You're asking a country that was invaded to give up territory. And that's not an easy ask for anybody.
And it's also, like Wandi said, it's Europe getting their act together, the political will, and if they even have the money to keep sending to Ukraine. You know, 4 years they've been funding this war. Thank you so much for your thoughts on that story. We're going to move on now. And Australia's social media ban for under-16s has come into effect, with platforms like Instagram, TikTok and YouTube being forced to block more than 1 million accounts. Under the new law, which started from midnight, 10 of the biggest social media companies will have to block all Australians under 16 or risk being fined up to $33 million. The latest regulation has been criticised by major tech firms. Michael, what do you make of this? And do young people need this protection from social media?
I think adults need the protection from social media.
I'm the doom scroller.
We all, I think, get into that far too often during the course of a week, where we're finding ourselves doom scrolling, as the kids would say. I do think that children need to be protected. You know, the issues and why this started was because of the cyberbullying, because of the online grooming, and because of the harmful content that's available. And I think that affects all of us. And when you're anywhere from the ages of, well, anyone who's younger than 16, those can have an incredible impact on your psyche and your mental health. And we're so much more aware of through social media, of the need to be aware of our mental health. I do think that this is the right move as a starting point. I do think that because this legislation was rushed through, I do think that this will be fine-tuned over the course of time. I've seen Australian reports where they've recognized that they're the guinea pig. Yeah. They are the test case, and that there are many countries around the world that are watching to see the good and the bad, and what they will do if, in fact, they introduce something similar. But for me, the biggest point, and the one that I'm most excited about, is that tech companies are going to now be held accountable for the content, and they're going to have to do a much better job of moderating the content, and maybe have less of a hand in the way that an algorithm is so personalized.
I find it interesting, this whole debate, but Wandi, you know, we talk about the algorithm and we talk about this under-16s ban coming in Australia, social media. It seems quite radical, and I think a lot of people would probably be watching this and think, wow, that's a big task.
And I mean, that's why countries like France have kind of played around with alternatives. A France parliamentary inquiry was looking into maybe introducing something more lenient towards teenagers by introducing a curfew, a digital curfew between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m.
That makes sense.
You know, that's a compromise.
It is a compromise, but once again, difficult to implement. And I also think the UK brought out this online safety bill, which was quite interesting. And a lot about that was age verification for certain websites, you know, really harmful content that teenagers and children can have access to. And that's been another thing that they've tried to implement. But Wandi, do you think this concept could be rolled out in other countries, and are other countries watching what Oz is doing right now?
I don't know if I should say this, but I feel like it's a...
Say it.
I'll say it.
Say it.
It's a dictator's dream to roll out something like this.
The ban.
The ban, yes. I mean, obviously a dictator would want an entire, social media ban for everybody. But of course, I mean, there are countries that are also looking to follow in the same footsteps. We've got Malaysia, who will be introducing the same model next year. You have Denmark, Singapore, New Zealand. So there's definitely a lot of interest globally regarding this. But as I mentioned before, I mean, France also have the same type of model structure that they've implemented in 2023 when it comes to the social media ban for under 16. They are looking into introducing this digital curfew for 15 to 18-year-olds between 10 p.m. and obviously 8 a.m., as I said. But then I just want to go back in time, and I just think to myself, when I was 15, at 10 p.m., I was already asleep. So I wouldn't necessarily have my phone in hand. My concern is, what about the other time frames? What happens then?
I do think, in answer to that, you know, there are some schools around the world that old school phones are allowed on school campuses, but no smartphones are allowed. So that would handle the school hour times. And then, something that we discussed earlier, then the responsibility goes back to the parents. So, okay, you get off the school grounds, you're allowed your smartphone, and then, again, the parent is then the one who's going to have to make sure that they monitor what, you know, their children are doing. I also think another way to tackle this issue is for educational institutions, schools from a very young age, to introduce curriculum where children are taught how to use it.
They're doing that in the UK. That's part of this Online Safety Act. And I find that what Wendy said about it being a dictatorship, I'm not a fan of bans or of the social media ban, and I have said that before. Because my concern, and a lot of it, is the fact that it's it could isolate people from certain things that they like to do, you know, like forums or games that people are interested in that are quite niche. And also, in Australia's a big country. People live far apart, you know, a lot of social media is to connect with family. And another thing, I think AI now, our generation, we didn't have it at schools, but most of the kids coming through school now will need AI for the future, for their career. And that's all sort of being guardrailed and monitored, and that makes me a little bit concerned.
I understand that point, but I think that you can live your entire life up to 16 years of age without something and still have a career in whatever field that is.
Let's see how this all plays out. It's fun. Wanty and I have kind of a similar stance in this. Michael, you are slightly the outlier, so we'll check back in a few
surprise
years.
there.
Hey. And now we're going to move on to another story. What do you buy the person who has everything at Christmas? Well, now you can ask an AI chatbot for gift advice. From ChatGPT to Gemini, you can now search ideas and bargains for your friends and family, seemingly taking the stress out of shopping. Well, there we are. What do you make of this idea, Wendy? And will you be using AI for your Christmas shopping?
I love bargains, of course. I mean, I love a good sale, and I also love shopping. You know, I love walking into a store, smelling the product. That's just me. I'm a traditional shopper. When it comes to, obviously, using AI, I mean, it's great because it will make my shopping faster. And I'll be able, obviously, to compare prices and, you know, all of that, and I'll save a lot more. But then, if we're talking about Xmas shopping, I'm going back to South Africa. I don't see how AI would be able to find the right retailer for chicken feet.
Well, we call it in Zimbabwe walkie-talkie, because it's
There's no
only
way.
the feet with the head. And I'm sure that if we went on AI, they wouldn't be able to find walkie-talkie, would they, Wendy?
No, I mean, there are certain African delicacies. I mean, I don't know if you've been to Africa. Have you?
I have not.
Oh, okay. So there are certain African delicacies where you have to walk into a store, and even furniture. You know, you just have to feel the leather, you know?
I think that's...
I don't think AI can do that.
But I think that in Africa, that might be a completely different situation. But I think in many other parts of the world where most people will have goods and food delivered to them, I think that AI is an advantage. And I think it makes shopping more efficient. I do think that there you can certainly compare prices. I think it's also, if your prompts are good, I think it can be very helpful in sparking an idea. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to purchase that, and it also doesn't mean that you're going to shop online. But at least you have a starting point if you're going to go to the mall, for instance.
I would be with Wendy on this. Again, I'm a traditional shopper. I love to give loads of thought to a gift and go in and buy a gift for somebody. I must admit something, I'm also a Christmas Eve shopper. I'm completely disorganized. So when I hear about AI, I think, oh God, you need to be really organized months in advance to start searching on it. I'm sort of the more traditional shopper, even though I'm lastminute.com. I still like a physical store. And I know AI, we talk about AI. What worries me is sometimes I order things off the internet and they look a little bit different when they arrive. Imagine
That's why you have to walk into a store.
Yeah.
Yes, but I would say that old school, you walk into a store, sometimes you know what you want to get, sometimes it's to browse.
Oh, yeah.
And how is the browsing in person any different than the browsing online or the browsing that you're going to go through when you're using AI?
The dress always looks different.
Exactly.
In store, doesn't it, to online?
Exactly. I don't think AI knows my silhouette.
But you could put it in there.
Yes, you could. Absolutely could. Yes, of course you could. I mean, AI is so efficient at not just giving you ideas, but taking the information that you're giving so that it turns out the information that's accurate and tailored to your needs. And that's what makes it also scary, is that it can be just for you.
Exactly.
And it makes it kind of weird that we're giving AI so much personal information. It already knows everything, doesn't it?
But our phones know everything. I mean, I don't know why people are so concerned about the smallest detail when they're out shopping and somebody asks for their mobile number or they ask for an email address. I mean, they already have so much information. I mean, who doesn't have a Facebook account or an X account or an Instagram or TikTok account? And you're sharing so much information about where you live, how you dress, what you look like, what you're angry about, what gets you excited. And now people are concerned about the gift that they're getting for their mom is going to be somehow an issue of privacy.
Look, Leanne, for me, I mean, I understand how the AI could drive up sales, but I'm more concerned now about, small businesses. Will they be able to afford this, type of technology?
And it's crushing our small businesses and the unique shops. It sort of takes the spirit out of things being a little bit different, because if we go into the big malls and stuff, there isn't very many independent stores anymore. It's all the big chain stores. And there has been a little bit of an argument when it comes to AI. How do you get these more unique platforms on that has one independent shop and it from not going under if not people aren't going to Christmas shop?
But the festive season, Christmas is, for the past number of years, decades, has been very much a commercial time. And I don't know that AI is doing anything more than making that time more efficient. We're still spending the same money, maybe with the big companies, maybe with the independent companies, but I don't know that AI is going to do anything other than make the consumer make their process or their shopping experience easier. And I think that's what everybody wants. Whatever they do, they want something that's a little bit easier than what they did before.
Dare I say it, but I always think men are more likely to shop online for Christmas presents, and us women are more likely to go into the shop.
Let's take a poll right
not
now.
think?
How many have an Amazon app on their phone, and how many have a shopping cart that's full of items? I bet you do. I bet you do.
I have an Amazon account, but it's empty.
Exactly.
I don't have
maybe
a
it's empty now, but how many times during the course of a year does it have 8 or 12 things? I know so many. I have a daughter, I have a wife, and I have female colleagues, and they will tell me the size of their cart. And then they'll empty it all after a couple of months, and then they'll go through the process of filling it up again. Sometimes just putting it in the cart is enough of a shopping experience for them.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes I try to like things on websites, like clothes. They might be a little bit expensive, but I love them. And then if a discount comes up, I see that it's much cheaper, so I'll buy it.
Yeah.
Something like that. But Lucy, our producer, is just telling me in my ear, she is a woman and all her shopping's been online. She's done it all already, and it's all been done and dusted.
And she has great taste.
And she has great taste.
In clothes,
She's lots of. I haven't bought one Christmas present yet, but anyway, let's move on from that. It's that time of the show where Wendy and Michael have chosen 2 of their quirkiest stories of the day. And Michael, tell us about the Symphony of Wolves.
So this was an AP story that was picked specifically for you because I know you love your dogs and I know you love your animals. And I've come in here too often with horrific animal stories that I know have not excited you. So this one is an AP story from Argentina, and they set what they think is the unofficial world record for the largest gathering of golden retrievers.
And you can see them right there on the screen.
Almost 2,400 gathered in a park in the capital of Argentina, and they believe they beat the record, again, an unofficial record from last year in Vancouver, where they had almost 1,700 that came together.
Can I tell you what? I'm glad that it's that many golden retrievers because they're quite well behaved.
Yeah.
I have really naughty dogs. And Jack Russells, I think that amount of Jack Russells together wouldn't be looking that calm.
Yeah, I think the record for Jack Russell Terriers would be maybe 3.
Yeah, 3 before. Like,
and then one would take off.
a mass brawl broke out between them. But what a beautiful pictures. Look at that. Oh, they're lovely dogs, actually, a golden retriever.
And they are great service dogs. You know, the golden retrievers in particular, wonderful at sniffing out cancer and also low blood sugar. So they can be instrumental for especially children and people who are maybe not as aware about when they are starting to falter.
And a great family dog. You know, great with children, great all-round dog. But I would have loved to have been in that park. Is it not so cute, Wendy?
So cute.
So cute. Oh, thank you, Michael. At least it wasn't a story about a zoo. Okay, and we're going to move on now. And yours, Wendy, is all about my favourite actor, who's Leonardo DiCaprio, and he's explained why he always covers his face in public.
Leonardo DiCaprio, at some point he was the sexiest man alive.
Yeah.
At some point. But, you know, Leonardo DiCaprio, as we know him, I mean, he's a mega star. He has been featured in these iconic movies, Titanic, Wolf of Wall Street. Leonardo DiCaprio is suffering from a disease called fame. So he's came out in an article by the Daily Mail, basically highlighting why he feels like fame has ruined his life. But I'm saying it's the trade that he had to make. So he goes out in public wearing caps, Batman, masks, COVID masks as well. I think it really confuses me on why he would feel like, you know, this is all unfair, because when he became a star 30 years ago, I think, you know, he should have known that there are people out there who are willing to even drink his bathwater. That's the price you pay for fame.
But there are actors nowadays who are much more honest about fame. And they'll say, when you're starting out, you have to ask yourself, do you want to be an actor or do you want to be famous? They'll see it as 2 different things.
But unfortunately for him, it's, you know, obviously both have happened to him.
But I also believe that that's the path that he's decided to go down. There are other celebrities, I'll name one who I'm a fan of, Bruce Springsteen, who will go out on the street and he will not necessarily have bodyguards with him. He recognizes that he will give of his time when he goes in and comes out of somewhere, but he also will operate as though he is just a regular person. And I think that if you go out on the street and you have 15 bodyguards, you're obviously trying to draw a fair bit of attention to yourself. If you go out on the street, maybe with a friend who acts as a bodyguard but is also a friend, I think that could be fine.
And also, if you go out on the street with an umbrella over your head like that, a COVID mask, a Batman mask, and a few caps, people are also going to be like,
I'm calling the paparazzi.
what's happening?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I do think one thing in Leonardo DiCaprio's defense, in a way, I do think that he's a little bit got the fame disease, but he's also an actor I think he's very talented, but he's also not one of the flashy guys who goes out and does all these big interviews. He's a humanitarian, he's into climate change, but you never really see him on the cover of magazines. He doesn't advertise his life. He's not selling, we don't know much about him. What is he doing? We know about his young girlfriends, but we don't actually know his hobbies or what he likes, and he doesn't advertise himself. So that might be a little bit frustrating for him, because he's not like a Tom Cruise who goes on all the big talk shows and does everything and jumps on sofas and carries on like that. So maybe he feels like, oh, well, maybe
I do feel for him. I mean, last year he came out
Really?
to say...
he's got...
Yes, I do. I do have feelings, you know. He did last year come out saying that he was diagnosed with OCD, and this has to do with, obviously,
We
the
all
work
have
that he
OCD,
does.
for heaven's sakes.
So fame has really impacted his mental health.
I don't know about that, and I wouldn't necessarily criticize his mental health, because I can't say. But I just think that there are choices that we all have to make. And I think that he's chosen, I mean, he's been acting since he was 14.
Oh, yeah, Basketball Diaries.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
before that, he was on Growing Pains,
Yes,
a
he was,
TV
yeah,
show.
yeah.
So he hasn't really known any other life except this. So he's created, his own world. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I don't think you can create your own world, benefit from it in all the wonderful ways that you have, and then complain about it because you don't necessarily like now, at almost 50 years of age, how you have, I guess, been treated by the public, or what it is that you have to do so that you can go about your daily. And unfortunately, I mean, I wear a baseball cap an awful lot as well. And it is part of life sometimes. I just don't think that it's that big a deal.
Oh, are you famous?
No, but the process that
I
we're
had
talking
no
about
idea.
is somebody wearing a hoodie and a baseball cap, that's a problem for him. I think that you're maybe being a little bit too sensitive if that is something that you have to deal with.
He is famous, Wanty, like you.
Oh.
Yeah, we've all got the fame disease.
I should wear a mask.
Yes.
There you go.
But it is interesting, this big old age debate when it comes to Hollywood. You seek the fame, you hate the fame, you seek the press, you slag off the press. It's the ongoing cycle, isn't it?
You want them when you want them.
You want them when you want them, and you don't cry at the bank machine. Let's be honest, they're
That's
not
right.
Paul.
Absolutely not.
Thank you so much for your thoughts on that, and of course to our guest today, Al Arabiya English journalist Wandi Intengento and Managing Director of This Is Dubai, Michael Jabri Pickett. And that's all from us on W News Extra. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Of course, follow us on X. G&T will be coming up next. Goodbye, thank you, and have a nice evening.